because I just have a couple questions I want to ask, and I think you have the answers to it. So, so the first one that I have to ask you is, why do black men fall victim to the system? Like, whether that's the schooling system, the prison system, whatever systems put into them, how do they fall into those traps? What do those traps look like?
Because racism is institutionalized. It's a system. Neely Fuller, if you pick up his book, he'll show you how him and Francis Cress Welsing, who wrote the ISIS papers, saw wherever they went in the world, and there was white people, there was racism, the same system in every country that they went to. That's when they realized it was a system, a worldwide system of racism. And read those books if you want to understand it. And it's in every fiber of this country. And what your question was, why are we...
How do we fall victim to that? Like, what does that look like?
It's impossible to not fall. Is it impossible to get in water and don't get wet? Is it impossible to roll in mud and don't get dirty? No. We can't escape it. And we have been battling viciously to survive ever since we've been here. And that's what they say about 400 years. So that we're getting weaker and weaker. We are being destroyed with invisible violence and media that controls us. So that's why you see us, black men, they're tired. And they have changed the direction of the attack. It's no longer on black men. It's on our children, black boys. And that's what they have attacked, black boys. And that's the foundation of a family. But that's what they have attacked, you know. And this attack starts immediately when they're born. And it never lets up. It's in the schools. It's in all of the institutions.
How do they take the black man out of the household? Like what does that formula look like? Because a lot of the kids are, looking up at the adults saying it's you guys' fault. Why, you guys weren't man enough to do what you had to do. But then the older generations are saying this was done by design. So what's that middle ground? How did they truly get exited in all these single parent households and overworking parents? How did that really manifest?
The system of racism. I told you it's everywhere in this whole system. They started in slavery. When they would separate, they would sell the man to one slave owner, his wife to another, his children to another. That was the beginning of the destruction of the black family. And then when we came here, they would rape us. They would do all kinds of things that would cause conflict amongst people. And then it came on down that this is everywhere we're at. The same thing is going on. And in my generation, where I began to first notice it, as a little boy, I saw that system of separation. And I became a part of that system of separation, My father I never knew. But family, when you had a family, you had support as a young man, as a boy growing into manhood. When my daddy didn't come around, I had a grandpa and a whole bunch of uncles who all looked to fill that void because we were a close-knit family. We had our problems, we had our arguments, we had everything that goes on in a family. But we never had anyone homeless or hungry in our vision because that was a code, you know, if he was homeless and a drunk or whatever he was, or she, we'd put him in the garage and make a little room and put a heater in there for him and see that they eat every day. Or we'd put him in the back room. You sleep back there, don't come out here in the front acting up. Their family filled that void. And there always was a matriarch in my family, which was my grandmother and grandfather. They had their problems, but when it came to working with their children and advising them and encouraging them and helping them in any way they could, that family was there. My uncle would come get me on Saturday mornings. He was a pool shark. And nobody would play him unless he would shoot with one hand. That's how good he was. And that's how he made his living. But on Saturdays, he would take me and sit me in the pool hall. And at that time, in the black community, poetic knowledge and wisdom was in the air. As anywhere you walked, you heard poetry and music. You might walk in a cafe and say, "Hey, Bob, how you doing?" He said, "It could be better, could be worse. Better be riding an ambulance than a hearse."
Ooh, bars.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you would hear it in the air. You know. And these people, they didn't speak good English and all that kind of stuff. They just had wisdom and knowledge. You don't have to speak English to gather wisdom and knowledge in this life. And that was so wonderful about it, you know. The black community was lively. We were poor, but we didn't even know it because we was having so much fun. And at that time, 85 years ago, and maybe in the late 40s and early 50s, we were the great migration from the South to here in places like California, Chicago, etc. There was 3 different, what do you call them, people coming. And so we were moving on up. And that's why we had songs, moving on up. You know what I mean? I remember, I can't think of the song now. As I was flying to Jamaica my first time, and I was singing a song, and it was a very, very upbeat song. I can't think of the name of it. Maybe I'll think of it later. But like "We Are Winners" or something like that. Well, our music what kept us from going insane. That's why the blues is a part of most of our music in some kind of way, because we had to learn how to swing it. You know, we were slaves. We had no rights. We couldn't protect ourselves in any way. But when you let us off work on Friday, we'll start playing the blues and patting our feet to it. We had to swing this. We had to survive. one thing that we knew, all the men my age, we couldn't just be good. We had to be better than good if we wanted to survive. That's why we dominated sports anywhere we could get, any area that we could get in, and be allowed to be a certain amount of freedom. We would excel because we knew we had to survive.
I have a question. So we posted a clip, and it was when he was talking about the crack epidemic and everything like that, right? We kind of know what the crack epidemic was, but can you highlight or give reference to how that affected the children having to grow up in a household where one or both of your parents are addicted? How did that manifest in the children, and how could they,
All of that's part of that system of, see, crack, usually things like heroin. There was, when I was shooting drugs, there was maybe 400,000 in the whole United States. But when crack came, it penetrated the whole, and it penetrated the whole spectrum, the poor and the rich. In other words, the successful brother got involved. They sent, whoever they is, or whoever what is, but it's a system. And this system sent us in that way. And there was psychological damage to many of those children. We have not understand that now. And we're beginning to see it in their children sometimes. Now, today. It's permanent damage. It wasn't fleeting or passing through. It's damage that will last as long as life is on this earth.
So then how does a child navigate a space where, because ultimately they're very vulnerable. They don't have a lot of power as a child. They're kind of receptive to have to deal with what's going on around them. How does a child, navigate that type of space? Because if they're getting influenced before they even have the consciousness to make decisions for themselves, that may impact the rest of their life.
Well, as I said, the family was still together. Remember, I used to say, Papa used to say something wise to me each day. You gotta hear it to even grasp it in any way. Even when you hear it later, if you never heard it, it may mean nothing to you. You had a wise grandmother. You learned morals and principles at home, then at the church. Your parents had morals and principles. Your auntie had morals and principles. We were God-loving people. We whatever religion we were serious about it. And what was the question again?
How does a kid navigate that? Like, what can
How I can only tell you how I navigated. As I said, there was wisdom all around me. And young people talk to old people. In fact, they used to tell some of us in my family, get out of here, child boy. All the old people be sitting around talking wisdom and all that kind of stuff. And I'd be sitting right there on the floor trying to listen, looking right in their mouth. They said, stop looking in my mouth, boy, and get out of here. Because we had a chance to at least hear what a decent man was. What Papa, they didn't have no curriculum to tell us what Papa was. My Papa showed me what Papa was, what Papa would do, how he thought about things. I'll tell you one incident where I learned a great thing. I was going to Catholic school. My grandmother bought houses next door to Catholic churches. So I was going to Catholic school, 5th grade. And at that time, you couldn't call nobody black. And so at school, this Italian boy called me black. And we got into it. And so when I would walk around the alley and come up where my grandmother in the house, my papa every evening would be sitting on the porch drinking a little wine. And he would sit there, and he was crippled, but he was so wise. So he would, every time we lived in the back house. And so I had to pass him sitting on the big porch steps, taking his little sip and smoking a cigarette. And so I tried. The boy had torn my shirt. My nose was bloody. And I kind of lost that fight.
Yeah, sound like it.
But I tried to go quickly around the back. It was a little path. And so when I got up there and closed the gate, I walked quickly. I had my head kind of down. And I said, "How you doing, Papa?" And tried to get on around there. He said, "Hold up." He said, "What happened to you?" I said, "Papa, I had a fight." And he said, "With who and for what?" I said, "Papa, he called me black." His papa was black as you. "He called me black." Papa sat up and bullets came out of his eyes. And he looked at me and he said, "Then what was you fighting for? You are black. And don't you ever forget that." I was so already brainwashed going to Catholic school that I walked off from my grandpa as he said that. I said, "Papa, my papa just," in my mind, I said, "My papa just called me black."
Oh.
Oh, the man I love more than anybody on this earth just called me black. But those bullet shooting eyes, I never forgot. And I learned to really, really love being black.
I think the only time you gave me those bullet shot eyes was, I think it was like 8-some years ago. It's probably like 8-some years ago, when I was being mean to Nanny one day in the living room. And he looked at me, and I forgot exactly what you said, but she was like, "Don't you ever talk to my wife like that." And I don't even remember what I said. It was just, that's the only time I saw the bloodshot things, is when it was dealing with your wife.
Yeah.
That's the only time I saw him upset, I think. My dad and my cousins and stuff, they might have a different story, but that's the only time I saw him upset. Interesting. Okay, what's the other ones? Oh, let me check the time on this. So, you had said something about Quincy Jones, I believe, and it was when he asked you what key are you guys talking in. That's another level of understanding of your craft that a lot of people are trying to get to. You have to really open yourself up to a whole nother pool of information, wisdom, knowledge, to really be able to dissect those different things.
But you have to recognize it. I knew Quincy Jones was a giant. I knew he knew what creativity was, because I was blessed to be raised around some of the greatest musicians in the world. Don Cherry, the father of world music, avant-garde jazz. Ornette Coleman, one of the greatest musicians and probably that it's ever been. Billy Higgins, at the most recorded drummer, I think still, that in America. And Horace Tapscott. I happen to be raised around those guys. And we all mostly came from the same spot. We were Texans in Louisiana. I think that's where Arnett was from. Don Cherry was from Oklahoma. But we all had the same, we were a family. But that family was now beginning to wither. Because we were all in the South. And then we came, south, north, south, east, and west. We started spreading out. And the family started getting smaller.
So throughout all of those different artists, including yourself, what is the common trait that you see that allows them to get to that level of artistry? Because you have to work to get there. There's something that's a differentiating factor. These artists held this quality, which allowed them to see, express, whatever the case may be. You said it's feeling, I think, right?
It's creativity and practice, 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 practice. That's what most giants would tell you. Practice, practice, practice. John Coltrane would play those difficult songs in rehearsal, forward and backwards.
Exactly.
As soon as he get to the end, he go to back and keep playing. I heard Ramsey Lewis, I believe, talking about playing with Miles Davis. And he said he was playing this song, Watermelon Man, I believe. No, one of Miles' classics. I don't know which one, Kind of Blue or whatever. But he had been playing it a long time, and he said this day something happened and he hit the complete wrong note. And Miles was crazy about not being excellent. And he said, man, I hit a note that didn't even go with nothing. And he said, Miles didn't get, he just looked kind of and made that note work. He didn't look at it as a mistake. That's why I say constant creativity and practice, practice, practice. And as I always say, and I learned from Don Cherry, style is the death of creativity. So an artist, that's his greatest friend, is creativity. He can maybe take a style and make some money with it, but he got to move on from that style if he's an artist, yes, a profound artist. I remember watching Quincy Jones, and his mentor was Ray Charles. And we were at the Shrine Auditorium, Michael Jackson and all of us, and we were all singing We Are the World. They had all these stars from Motown and everywhere. White people and all white giants. And they were all singing We Are the World. And Quincy had us rehearsing it. He had us rehearsing it. Ray Charles sit there, he's blind. He got up and said, Quincy, let me have that. Sing, children. That's what he said. And they started singing, and the creativity just started popping all over. And they all had different parts.
Free form.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like the great Billy Higgins, the drummer. I saw him in a class of little kids from about 6, 7, 8, 9. He had. And so he set up by his drums and beside his drums, and he would call, come here, son. Here, he'd hand him the sticks. He didn't even tell him how to hold them or nothing, because he had already demonstrated all that. You understand? When they came into class, he'd be playing. Now, when they would go up there and play, when they would get down, they called him Smiling Billy. When the kids would get on off the stage from playing the drums, however they wanted to play them, Billy would say, "Great, man, that was really beautiful. Thank you, thank you. Have a seat. Next, come on, son." So he did that with everybody in the class. He just said, "Come on up. Here's the sticks. Go on, play." He done demonstrated already, remember? So after the class was over, I said, "Billy, why did you tell them how to hold the sticks, man? Or, you tell them they could do this better or whatever." He said, "Man, I wouldn't dare do that." I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm trying to see where they coming from, man. I ain't trying to give them my thing. This is about creativity. They might have showed me a way to hold the sticks. They might have, I want to see where they coming from, not where I'm coming from. As they advance, I will begin to do those things. Hold your sticks like this, son. Do this like this." He said, "But not now. I want them to find them. They find they self." And that's what it blew me away. He said, "I'm not going to mess up their creativity. They may have something new, man, that I'll knock out the way with my stuff. I'm trying to see where they're coming from first." So I learned to great. See, that's the kind of cats I learned lessons from.
See, and that is a very powerful, because I don't even think I fully understand it, but I feel it. Geez, I had a question that was right on the top of my head. Just talking about kids, and kids having new thoughts, and kids, we're in a new time. This ties into like my next thing. You grew up in a time where you didn't have internet technology. Like, you guys had it, but it wasn't to the extremities of what we have now. And you've seen the gap. You've seen the not even the gap. You've seen the growth of it. These new generation, our generation, 22 under, even probably a little bit older, we grew up with technology and we see it a little bit differently. How do you, what advice would you give for a child going into this space, trying to utilize it for their benefit at that? Because we've seen examples of the middle ground, the ones who kind of grew up with it, but they're trapped by the technology, they're trapped by it.
Yes,
versus the younger ones, it's like different
I
level.
do think you guys are trapped in technology. And why I believe that is because that's another part of the destruction of the family of the whole country. Because, what was that? Technology educates your children without your permission. They give your child what's hip. That's the main thing. I think a child has to try to understand technology and not be a victim of it. And most people are victims.
A lot of people are, and it's crazy. I like to use the phrase consumer versus producer. The ones who are consuming the content versus the ones who are producing the content. It's two different headspaces. But if the people who are putting out, all the technology, whether that goes from the iPhone, social media, whatever the case may be, if they're not being intentional with what they're putting out to, in other words, serve, then it's going to continue destructing us. I think a big part of it is how much is on there and it's unfiltered. You got the good and the bad.
Well, they say, that technology is neutral. Well, that's a lie. And the reason why I say it's a lie, technology is the wish or whoever created it. That's what it is. What is the desires of the creator? It's not just neutral. Nobody just invented a car to keep walking. People invented cars to ride in and to sell to you. All of that's involved in technology. Whoever controls that controls the earth today.
Literally.
Literally.
You're right. Well, I think we can stop right there unless there's something else you want to touch on regarding the
It's
black
alright.
family, anything that you feel as if it's important, since we're on the family notion. Anything that's on your spirit.
Well, black men have to cherish the family. They have to put value on what's valuable. A black man, I have a wonderful woman. A black woman, I have a wonderful man. But he's cheating with a whore and she's cheating with his best friend. You know, we have to learn what the principle of marriage is. It ain't going downtown. I remember when me and my wife, old Pops, I told you that knowledge was everywhere. He used to be in the cafe, he was an old player. And he stopped me one day and said, because he saw me with a lot of girls, over and over I'd have another one. And he told me one day, he said, see that girl right there? That's your soulmate. And he was absolutely right. And I told him, yeah, we going to get married soon. He said, you don't need no marriage. You already, God married you. That's your soulmate. Did you hear what I said? I said, yeah, Papa. He said, getting married is only going down there paying that guy some money. That's what getting married is. He said, and that's your soulmate, boy. And just like he said, I told you, wisdom was all around you. Pop used to sit and he had more influence on us than our parents. Because he was always sitting in the cafe drinking coffee, and then they would talk to, we talked to old men then. You know, we could see the wisdom in them. We could see those that were destroyed. You know, the community was very different. But through gentrification, they began to, like, over the 100 black towns that were destroyed, black communities were destroyed in the same way through gentrification, etc. That's about it I can say about that.
That was a lot, but it was needed. Okay, well, he just took y'all to Sidewalk University.
That's what you ought to tell them. I'm a
Okay.
street poet. I ain't trying to street griot. Street griot.
Yep. Keeper of your tradition, history, and what is it? Culture.
Tradition, history, and culture. If you just stay there with that's the way to approach life. What are their traditions? What is their culture? You know, what are their values? Their values, if you watch a man and see what his values are, you will know who he is. He values money. He values honey. You know, it's what do you value? That'll tell who you really are. You know what I mean? Do you value trying to go to bed with every sister you meet? What is your value?
Yeah, that's a deep question. I think nobody really would have asked themselves that.